For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Manouk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours.
I thought it was Crocodile Dundee.
It's not Crocodile Dundee. I'm going to try. I'm going to let you figure out why I'm dressed like this. I'll see if who can get it first. I have faith that Dave's going to get it first rather than Ezra. But I'll let you guys think about it.
I have no idea.
You have no. Dave's got no idea.
You look like Leisure Suit Larry is all I know.
Ezzy hates me with a burning passion right now.
I know. Okay, got it. The Kentucky Derby.
There you go. It's the first Saturday in May.
It's
Kentucky Derby Day. The run for the roses. You got to dress up. You guys know that, so that's why I'm dressed like an absolute goof. But
you look good. I don't think you look like a goof. I like it.
As someone who's owned a horse on this chat, I can tell you right now.
I was going to say Ace Ventura with that shirt, Drew.
That is a good point.
Thank you. I didn't quite get to the tailor in time to get him to custom make me a derby outfit, so I had to raid the.
I hate to break it to you. You wouldn't be allowed in Keeneland with that outfit.
Well, the Derby, that's good. The Derby's in Churchill Downs, not Keeneland.
I'm saying you wouldn't be allowed in anywhere in Kentucky with that outfit.
Actually, I would fit. This wouldn't be garish enough. That's the flip side. This wouldn't be a noticeable enough outfit. I would need the hat to be a lot bigger, the shirt to be a lot brighter. The jacket, unfortunately, isn't. Oh shoot, I forget the type of fabric that's
silk.
Nylon.
No, it's okay. It's not lit. I'll think about it.
Cashmere, cashmere, Drew. It's cashmere.
Not cashmere. Anyways, yes, there you go. It is the 4th. It is the May the 4th. So it was either this or you dress up like a Star Wars character, and I don't have any Star Wars stuff. So in any event, we'll still.
Can you imagine that? By the way, Drew, you'd be a legend.
Vader.
Could you imagine if all of a sudden, like, we go to a commercial break and Drew comes back and he's like in a Darth Vader mask, and he's like, "All right, May the 4th," and then next commercial break,
Sam, I am your father.
Some obscure day.
Yeah, just keep finding. There you go. Seersucker is what I was thinking about, Scott. Thank you. Yes, I didn't have my seersucker suit readily available. Maybe for next year. But anyways, for all those celebrating with a lot of bourbon, happy Derby Day. But for the rest of us, let's talk about the Winnipeg Jets on this Saturday morning.
Bourbon. Yum, yum, yum.
Put it in Ezzy's belly. Good things happen, etc., etc. Anyways, the Winnipeg Jets, garbage bag day, end of season this week. It's all sort of come crashing down very quickly and unexpectedly, given how the season ended in 5 games to the Colorado Avalanche a few days ago, and then the media availabilities on Thursday. All of those are available on our YouTube channel and on illegalcurve.com in case you missed any of those. Yes, Dave?
Big, massive, humongous shout out to Colby Spence, who joined me
absolutely
at the end of season media availabilities for the first time this year. Usually I'm a lone wolf trying to get all this stuff up and losing my mind doing so. And Colby came, he facilitated, he shot all the video, and we worked in tandem. But let me tell you, he was invaluable for me on Thursday. And we were quick. We were quicker than anybody else, and we had it up. And the quality, as he was commenting about how good the quality was in that HD. So the video was amazing. The audio was amazing. So we got those up. Every single one is available for you to watch if you didn't get a chance to see them. So it's, probably an hour and a half or 2 hours worth of footage. But
I was going to say, Dave, you guys must have been there for at least 6 or 7 hours.
Oh yeah.
We were there Thursday. There was a lot of interviews.
We got there at 9 and we left at 3. So, but it was, there was, it was sporadic. It wasn't obviously like right after one after the other, but it would be, and then there'd be a lull. And then obviously, because it had to deal with Kevin Cheveldayoff and Larry Simmons doing their media exit media meetings with the players, and then we'd get them after that. So it was a busy Thursday, and we have it completely chronicled, legalcurve.com or on our YouTube channel. But of course, don't do it while we're live. Do it after the show.
So let's talk about the media availabilities. Let's talk about the exit interviews. And I want to start with the future of current Winnipeg Jets head coach Rick Bowness. We know that the team has an option for the 24-25 season as to whether or not he will be their head coach. It's the team option. We know what he said after the media availabilities. We know what Kevin Cheveldayoff said. I would say that both of them, particularly Kevin Cheveldayoff, in fitting with his previous reputation, kept his cards very close to his chest regarding the future of the Winnipeg Jets head coach. So I ask you guys,
you should read the Drew, just because we know, can't make an assumption that everybody knows. Did you read the quote from Rick Bowness in terms of what he said?
I mean, I didn't, but I certainly can. Or why don't you paraphrase it if you want for the audience?
Well, I'm just like hold on. I don't have to paraphrase it. I have it on a little site called thelegalcurve.com as your site for all the latest Jets and Moose news. But he said, hold on, now I got to bring it up. You're forcing me to bring it up.
Sorry.
What stood out to me, sorry, Dave, as you bring that up, what stood out to me was, and you were in the room with Colby, right?
Yeah.
What stood out to me was he was getting choked up. Like, I wouldn't say he was crying, but he was getting teared up, Dave, when he was asked about his future, and he was talking about how it's a privilege to be in the NHL and how it's been, his life, because, for those who don't know, Rick Bowness played in the NHL before he coached. He coached the 1.0 Jets. Yeah. I don't believe he was a head coach. He was an assistant?
No, I think he was an interim. He was an
interim. I think 1 year, right, Drew?
Yeah.
And then he was an assistant coach. But he played in the NHL. So, I mean, he's been in the game for what? 50 plus years,
something like that.
So he was getting emotional. That's what stood out to me. We'll get into Connor Hellebuyck and some of the other players, because he was also getting pretty emotional.
Well, but my question here, Drew, here's the comment. So he goes, every year I sit down and I talk to Judy, talk to the kids, I'll talk to Chipper and Chevy. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I want to do, but that will come out. And then, of course, Freezer in his follow-up question said, so in a perfect world, you'll be back. To which he responded, no surprise, we'll let you know. Yeah, but I'm just saying, so just in case people didn't know exactly what he said, now you do.
There you go. And then Kevin Cheveldayoff was, of course, when in his media availability, was asked similarly, what the future of, Rick Bowness would be. And he was circumspect about it at best. He certainly did not give any, clear answers with regard to Rick Bowness and his future. So I'm going to ask you guys, as you sit here on May the 4th, do you expect Rick Bowness to be back as the Winnipeg Jets head coach? Ezzy, I'll start with you on that one.
Sure, I appreciate it. Yeah, I really, it's tough to say right now, right? Like the way Rick Bowness was talking, I don't know if he knows, right? So as you mentioned, Drew, there's a club option, which is kind of a unique situation. It would be a little bit more clear, I think, if his contract was just up and he hadn't signed a new contract, right? I guess we would probably still be asking the same questions, but look, Rick Bowness is not a young man, and I'm not saying that with any type of ageist, slant. He's 69 years old. I don't think, he's going to be a head coach in the NHL for the next, 10 years. It gets to a certain point where I think, you have to realize that, your best coaching days might be behind you. I'm not saying that they are necessarily. I'm just making a point. Like, he's not a 55-year-old guy. He's almost 70 years old, right? So I think that's of note here. But I think, there's probably going to be a little bit of, I guess it depends, right? Like, does he want to come back? Do the Jets want him back? Is there that unfinished business? What direction are they going, right? Because I think who's the next head coach of the Jets is directly tied to what direction this team is going. And I'm not talking about whether the Jets are going to rebuild or anything like that. The Jets, let's get that off the table right now. And we're obviously going to talk to Kenny Wiebe about this in about 20 minutes or so. The Jets are going for the playoffs. They're going for a Stanley Cup. Their slogan is literally, we're all in. So I think where they decide to go with this team, I think more so is what I'm talking about is, are they going to bring some younger players into the fold here? Because we know that Ville Heinola, he's ready for the NHL. Like Brad Lambert, if he's not ready for the NHL, Dave, he's close to being ready. He's going to be on the Jets sooner rather than later. He already got a game. Nikita Chibrikov, Colby Barlow. Like, Barlow's going to spend some time in the American Hockey League, but the point is the Jets, I think, have to go younger. And that doesn't mean they have to go younger with their coach. I'm just saying, does Kevin Cheveldayoff, does Mark Chipman, does he think that, Rick Bowness is going to be able to take this team to the next level with some younger players in the lineup, like Heinola, like Brad Lambert? I think, Dave, Elias Salamonson is a guy that's on the radar in the next couple of years, right?
Oh, yeah,
So
for sure.
it's really hard to say though, because Scott Arniel is definitely a head coach in waiting. Doesn't necessarily mean he will be the next Jets head coach, but we saw in 13 or 14 games when Rick Bowness was with his wife Judy that Scott Arniel did a pretty good job. I'd say actually an excellent job. So it's really hard to read, Drew, because Rick Bowness did such a good job with turning the Jets into the best defensive team or one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. But it's 2 years in a row where they've been defeated in the first round. So you have to, again, if the answer to the question is we believe Rick Bowness can take us to the Stanley Cup final and possibly win a Stanley Cup, then I think you're keeping him. But if not, then I think that's probably, the last that we've seen of Bowness as a head coach of the Jets.
Dave, same question to you. I'll preface it before by mentioning what Darren Dreger said.
Okay, good. I was just pulling that up, but okay, I'm glad you're doing that.
Yeah, what Dreger said, again, paraphrasing, he was on Sports Center with Jay Onrait, and Jay asked Dreger what his impressions were and what his inkling was, and Dreger said that if basically,
do you want me to read you the direct quote?
Sure, if you want, if you have it handy, you can go ahead with it. Okay,
my gut tells me that's unlikely. I don't think that Rick Bowness will be back. I don't know that for sure.
There you go. So that's Darren Dreger giving his opinion. And, for whatever you want to say about the insiders, they usually, in circumstances like this, I'm going to defer to their opinion as having some weight behind it. So same question for you, Dave, as I asked Ezzy. Do you expect Rick Bowness to be back as the Winnipeg Jets head coach next season?
I can tell you who doesn't expect him, the chat right now, because I threw up a poll there. We've already got over 50 votes, and so far 72% have said they do not expect him to be back. So keep voting in the poll in the chat. So let us know your thoughts as to whether Rick Bowness will be back or not.
Can you add a poll about my outfit if people like it or not?
We'll do a poll every hour. So I'll close this poll down at 10 o'clock. So you have till 10 to vote on this one, and then we'll switch over to Drew's outfit choices for the record, I'll give you a sneak preview of the poll. Which outfit is worse, this one or that Halucious smiley face yellow shirt that he sometimes wears? So you can just think about mull over that one until 10 o'clock when I make that one live.
You might have to explain to the audience what Halucious means. I don't know if that's necessarily a commonly known word.
I think that people can understand,
from people in our community.
I think that they can understand the general sense is what I'm trying to convey, which is as ugly as F. Anyways.
And also, is Drew referring to the Jewish community or the wacko community?
Yeah. Anyway,
that's a shout out for those who follow federal politics.
That went right over my hatted head.
Pierre Poilievre, he was.
I now realize what you were saying. Yes, it took me a minute to get it.
Wow, Drew, missing out on the federal.
I try to avoid politics now. That's a different part of my life.
Who knew that I was a Legal Curve's Rosemary Barton?
Anyways, she's from Winnipeg originally.
Yeah, she is.
No,
She's
I mean,
look.
Rick Bowness was asked to do some things to change the culture of this team and to make things different. I think Adam Lowry, obviously choosing Adam Lowry as the captain, and it's clear that this is a different league. This team is different. Now people can say, oh, well, it's the same thing, same result as last year. Well, this team won the William Jennings, and you can say, well, they failed in the playoffs. That's fine. They did fail in the playoffs. They lost to a team that we all agree could probably end up winning the Stanley Cup. But at the same time, you have to look at what he was able to do. His again, I'm not talking about whether he's a failure or not. The only thing I hesitate on, and again, I was 20 feet from him when he was talking. So you're right when you say he was emotional, you could pick up on that fact. But the only thing I could think of was that unfinished business. He's been, what did he say? He's been in the Stanley Cup Finals 4 times and never won.
Yeah.
So does he think that he can do it? Now, I mean, let's be realistic. Maybe they need to make some tweaks to the coaching staff, and I don't really, say, oh, you need to do this, But clearly, I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff listed off the special teams in his end of season as one of the big problem areas for this franchise, where they were very good 2 years ago and they weren't good this year. So we know that that's, an area that is going to need to be tweaked. So, if you tweak that.
Hold on. Can I just jump in 1 second? I don't think it has to be tweaked, Dave. I think it has to be revamped. Like, I think, to me, that's almost as big of a problem. Like, you go back to, sorry to steal your thunder, Dave, because I want to go right back to you, but special teams, I think, were, aside from, look, the biggest thing was the Jets played way too much in their zone. We talked about this on the pregame show, on the postgame show. The avalanche speed was too much for the Jets to handle. The Jets were outmatched by McKinnon, Makar, and the rest of the Avalanche.
The
But the special teams, the power play especially, I think needs to be revamped. The Jets should have a top 10 power play in the league as far as I'm concerned with the talent they have, especially now we know Gabe Vilardi is Mr. Power Play, right?
Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention that like, I don't know, is Brad Lauer back next year? I don't know if he is.
I don't know either, and that's kind of what I was alluding to. And look, John Gogens, who's going to be on with us in the second hour of the show, he's fantastic, coaching the QMJHL. So we can ask him about power play, penalty kill, and what he saw from a coaching perspective, because he'll be able to provide some really good insight, I think. But yeah, I just think that there's two things. I mean, this was like COVID hit Rick Bowness hard last year. You could see it impacting him throughout the year. And, this year, Darren Dreger revealed, I guess, that he had kidney stones. That's what he was dealing with when he had to come back from, I'm assuming. Yeah, exactly. Richard Polyp and all that stuff. But,
those.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Well, hold on. The best was, though, that we saw Jordan Hockman, who's an ear, nose, and throat doctor. Shout out to him. But also the guy who's going to be doing my surgery, he was actually at the pregame show. So he's like, yeah, did you get that letter about when you're having your surgery? That's who that was. During that was right after the pregame show ended.
I didn't realize he was going to be your physician. That's hilarious.
Shout out to Dr. Gall. Go ahead.
There you go. So
I think Gall should work on gallbladder, shouldn't he?
Okay,
it's funny.
Out. We should, as he put Drew in a timeout for that.
So,
I think that there's the
have some bourbon, Drew.
I think there's the unfinished business element of things for Rick Bowness, but I think at the end of the day, I think that there's some frustration voiced by the players, obviously, whether it was they tried to dial it back a little bit or not. And I do think that if I was voting in today's poll, my vote would be no. I just don't think. I think that it's just been too much. It's been too hard with his wife's health and all that stuff. Again, I know he wants to chase the cup, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to recognize what's best for him and probably the family, and what's best for the team is for him to take a step back.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying he may stay on as an advisor. Who knows? But I'm just saying I could see them saying, let's hand the reins to someone who's, maybe a little bit younger, a little bit more fortified to doing this for the, because again, it's not an easy job. It's not an easy job. People act like coaching is this simplistic thing. It's like, you got to eat, like live, breathe this stuff every single day. And you got to like, you go home at night, you got to watch video. There's so much involved in this day-to-day business that, it takes a toll. And so we'll see, but my inclination would be to say no.
And one more thing, Drew, it's not a foregone conclusion that if Rick Bowness steps down or the Jets choose not to exercise their option, doesn't necessarily mean that it's a guarantee that Scott Arniel's the next head coach. There's other coaches out there. Like Craig Berube, I think, is an excellent coach. He's been linked to Seattle, right? We don't know. Dave Hackstall, I think the reviews have been mixed on Hackstall. Obviously, he did an excellent job with the University of North Dakota. What about the guy that stands out to me who has to be at the top of the list? What about Gerard Gallant?
Yeah, a lot of people saying Gerard Gallant in the chat. I can see Luis Batista just mentioned Gerard Gallant. Look, there's always going to be there's good coaching candidates. There's no question about it, and I think this is an opportunity, for the Jets, if they choose to move on from Rick Bowness, and we don't know the answer to that just yet. If they choose to move on from him, I would hope that they would cast a wide net and not necessarily immediately just hand it over to Scott Arniel. Look, Scott Arniel did an admirable job when Rick Bowness left the team to deal with Judy Bowness's health issues, and then later in the year when he left the team again, Scott Arniel did a very good job. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's the best candidate to step in. I think what Rick Bowness has done for this Jets team and this Jets franchise is he's established for them the knowledge that there has to be some structure in how you play. Yep. If any, his legacy after these 2 years is he established structure, and that structure is something that Jets should be able to build upon moving forward. Now, whomever the next head coach is obviously going to tweak the approach a little bit, but Bowness at the very least should have, the players should acknowledge that, yes, you need at least a bare minimum of a structure and a defensive mindset in order to have some success in this league. And that is not a small task that Rick Bowness has accomplished. You can argue to have turned the Winnipeg Jets, a franchise that has never been known for their defense, into a Jennings Award-winning franchise, might be close to the tippy top of his accomplishments as an NHL head coach. And that's a pretty damn impressive accomplishment.
It is, but I think, and I see that Kenny is ready. He's early for the buffet.
There you go. Let's get him in. He's ready. He's queued up.
He's ready.
He's champing at the bit as he always is.
Wow, you're bringing him in early.
As he don't
see him there.
Don't be stealing my eggs Benny there. Great lid.
Kenny, when
Drew,
you're ready,
great lid.
Look,
Drew,
I'm
great
never
lid,
going to step in the way of the buffet opening early, right? Like, just because we're 5 or 6 minutes early doesn't mean we can't open it up early, right?
That's good. That's why we're here.
He kicked down the door to the buffet to get in there a little bit early. Yeah, thank you, Ken. Ken Wiebe, of course, joining us. The Winnipeg
Happy to
Free
be
Press. Yes, it's a busy Saturday morning. Lots to discuss. We've started, as you probably overheard in the background there. We were talking about the future of Rick Bowness as the member of the Winnipeg Jets. I'll ask you this, Kenny. Next season, for the 24-25 NHL season, Winnipeg Jets season, is their head coach currently a member of the organization?
Yes, he is. Whether it's door number 1 or door number 2, I'm not certain yet.
So let me stop you there. Then you don't.
I'm going to put it this way: that there may still be a coaching search if Rick Bowness is retiring or not back. But I would say that the likelihood will be that Scott Arniel is the head coach if Rick Bowness is not. And for folks who think that that's some sort of True North congratulations or lifetime achievement award, it's not. It is true that Scott Arniel worked for the Winnipeg or the True North folks before with the Manitoba Moose, played for them, was their captain, was an assistant coach, was their head coach that took them to the Calder Cup final. But this is not a lifetime achievement award. And a thank you for your service. For folks who have forgotten, Scott Arniel was part of important coaching staffs with Alain Vigneault with the Vancouver Canucks and New York Rangers, including a team that went to the Stanley Cup final. He was part of a Washington Capitals staff that, under Peter Laviolette. And, you guys heard when I asked him about Scott Arniel on the first visit by the Rangers this season. And Peter Laviolette, a guy who has won the Stanley Cup and has been around the NHL for quite some time, is one of the winningest coaches in the NHL, said that having Scott Arniel on his staff made him a better coach. So, the fact that Scott Arniel chose to move to Winnipeg with the wife that he married and has continued to make it his off-season home, something.
I'm glad he didn't choose to come to Winnipeg with the wife he didn't choose to marry.
Drew, just stick with me here. For all the folks who say there's not enough players invested in the community, Scott Arniel, an original Jet, has made Winnipeg his home and continues to. And that's not why he's being hired. He's being hired because he is a smart coach and a very capable person. And sorry, when I mean hired to the staff originally. What is to come in the next days or weeks is definitely is something I am watching with as much interest as everybody else. We're trying to pick up the breadcrumbs as best as we can here. To me, Rick Bowness is an emotional person. We know that. If you were in the room and Dave was in the room, his eyes were welling up, and I don't think that that's for no reason.
I wasn't in the room, Kenny, and you could see he was, he wasn't cutting onions, that's for sure.
No, and again, that's not to say that. Again, I don't think for people who wanted decisions 3 days ago, like you don't make a decision like this before having exit meetings with players first, then exit meetings with coach and general manager. That is the order of operation. If the decision had been made, like I said with Hustler yesterday, this isn't a Dave Lowry, thank you for being the interim head coach. If you would like to apply for the job, please do so. That's not what's happening right now. But again, and I don't think it's just optics. When a guy is nominated for the coach of the year, I don't think that the Jets are, if there is a decision to come, I don't think they were waiting for the nomination, but at the same time, and they're not going to, Rick Bowness said it so well, Dave, right? We know there's been lots of criticism, and hey, some of it is warranted criticism.
Mhm.
But Rick Bowness said, I'm okay with the criticism, and I'm okay with making decisions that people don't agree with. I mean, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Now, that's what the Jets are faced with. Are you going to be faced with, the questioning that comes with, potentially, moving on from someone who is again, we think that Rick Tocchet is probably the most likely winner of the Jack Adams Award, and it could be Andrew Brunette, but Rick Bowness is a deserving finalist, and Paul Maurice would have been too. And I'm not just saying that because Paul coached in this market. Paul played without two of his top defensemen for a chunk of this season and still won the division and tied for fourth with those same Winnipeg Jets. So it's an interesting decision. And again, Rick Bowness may decide to retire. I mean, when you're still feeling the emotion and rawness of having lost and the disappointment that comes with being a first-round exit after thinking that you had a Stanley Cup contender in your dressing room, of course you want to feel, you're going to feel all of the things and say, I'm ready for training camp to start tomorrow. Now, if he goes back home and, gets to Halifax and plays a few rounds of golf and suddenly has the conversation with Judy and his kids that he said he was going to have, maybe he changes his mind, with some second thoughts. Now, that's not what I heard from Rick Bowness. I heard a guy who sounded like, Drew, to your point, when you consider, and this is, for folks who are only thinking that Rick made bad decisions, I'm here to tell you the Jets are playing today, at least in the regular season, the way Paul Maurice wanted them to play, but never could get them to play in terms of defensive zone commitment. So the Jets aren't going to just say, get lost. They know the strides they made. And the fact that they didn't translate into the playoffs, of course, that's something that you have to investigate. Why was that? But I can tell you right now, it wasn't a bad plan that the Jets had going into the playoffs, because they executed the plan, 8 days earlier against the same team. But as Connor McGahey reminded me, guys, the year that the Avalanche won the Cup, he said, I think they were 1-6-1 or 1-6-2 in the last, games before the playoffs arrived, and then cranked their intensity up to 12. Mm-hmm. So again, this is very fascinating, and it's a big time discussion point, and it's important. But no matter what happens with Rick Bowness, Drew, you nailed it. The fact that the Jets became a consistently sound defensive team, like, we're talking, this is miracle work territory, and I'm not saying that for effect. Now, part of it is due to roster construction. Kevin Cheveldayoff has turned over the roster to include far more two-way players and deserves credit for that. But guys, as I wrote, Kevin Cheveldayoff just had the best year of his 13-year tenure as general manager, and it amounted to one playoff win. So as good as that year was, he has to be even better this summer in an off season. Will it be as dramatic? Probably not. But there still needs to be, change, not just for the sake of change because they have to turn the roster in order to compete with the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars and the rest of the teams in the Pacifics, right? Those are the facts. The Jets defense core has to be improved. Like, Josh Morrissey has put together two of the best seasons in franchise history. Yep. And the fact that he is a, at least top 5, if not top 6 Norris Trophy vote receiver for 2 years in a row is outstanding. But 2 of the Jets' top 3 defensemen are unrestricted free agents and are not guaranteed to return. So not even if they did return, they need to improve the defense core. If one of them moves, that challenge is harder. If both of them move, now it's not a total back to the drawing board, but you're going to have to be creative in terms of trades or free agency.
So, Kenny, Drew's not the only person that has a prop. I obviously support the Winnipeg Free Press.
Hey, nicely
got-
done. Nicely done.
I've got your article with your colleague Mike McIntyre, the headline "Who will stay and who will go."
Yeah.
And you just talked about Brendan Dillon, Dylan DeMello, 2 UFAs, and to me that like, and we can get into Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli, who are obviously also pending UFAs. To me,
I can tell you, we're not going to have to spend much time with Tyler Toffoli.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I don't think. I think is he not going to ask for?
There's no think.
Money?
There's no think.
He's just not coming back.
It was a good effort and it just didn't execute.
Look, he had a couple goals in the 5 games, right? Like but he wasn't good enough. But let's focus on the defense, Kenny, because I think the most fascinating thing to me, like I'm going to put it out there, just giving my own opinion. I think absolutely Dylan DeMello should be back. I think the Jets should re-sign him. I think he's done an admirable job. He deserves a pay raise. Brendan Dillon, though, I thought, and again, I should mention, I wasn't there. You and Dave M were there, obviously, at Matt Frost Media Center. I thought it was interesting when Brendan Dillon said that he was disappointed that he didn't have a contract extension. I'm not saying that he still won't have one, but I guess, do you see Brendan Dillon signing a long-term deal? I guess long-term in quotations, 4 or 5 years or something like that. And how would that impact Ville Heinola? Because I think you'd agree, don't the Jets have to create room in that top 6 for Heinola?
Yeah, right on, Drew. And just to clarify, I mean, Tyler Toffoli, it was a smart call. We all praised it when it happened. It ended up being more in Kevin Hayes territory than Paul Stastny territory. It just didn't fit the system. I mean, Tyler tried hard. He produced some goals during the season, and yes, he got 2, but he just didn't have the impact that was expected of a guy with championship pedigree. And he showed his sniper ability in Game 5, but there just wasn't enough of that finish and dangerous chances when it counted. In terms of the defense, I spoke with Dylan DeMello in October in Montreal, and he expressed the same sort of disappointment. Again, it's not outward like wake up call territory, but it's when you are on the first pairing, of course you're going to feel like you should be signed. And he said it himself. Of course you expect Scheifele and Hellebuyck to be dealt with first, but there is an element of what about me for both of those players. They expressed it during the season, and again, we want players to be honest all the time and be a little bit more transparent. That's great. It wasn't a shot at Kevin Cheveldayoff. They understand what the pecking order is, but it's impossible to, if guys around you that you value are getting raises and you're not, of course you're going to be wondering, maybe I need a visit with HR or need to go into the GM's office, right? I mean, in all facets of the world, I think people would feel that way. That Brendan is a little bit more outgoing and kind of used humor. I think that's more to do with Brendan. I mean, and people that say he shouldn't be speaking out for what he wants, that's absurd. Like, of course you should be, advocating for yourself. Now, do I think he is out the door because that's occurred? No. But what I will say in both cases, guys, if you've waited patiently for a raise and you're now, 2 months away from, all NHL teams having the opportunity to offer said raise, you're going to have to be blown away by your current employer. I mean, even if you love your current employer, right? This is simple, right? If the current employer, there's no way of knowing the current employer can offer the most money or the best deal for you. And it's important to remember too, he didn't just make a bunch of jokes. He said, I've been on teams, and he means the San Jose Sharks, in my estimation, where guys who made it to the Cup final and thought, it's pretty good here, but I'd like to take the money and go elsewhere. And then those players never had a sniff after that at the Stanley Cup. So congratulations, you got an extra mil, taxable, you got an extra 500,000, but you never got back to where you wanted to be. So I'm not saying Brendan Dillon's waiting for a $6 million offer, but what he wants, if he's going to take the term, whether it's term or dollar value for both players. And we know that Dylan DeMello went out of his way to say, with a second child arriving, and congratulations to the family, that he wants to put roots down, right? He's been, he's moved 2 times. And if he moves a third, he wants it to be for more than, 1 or 2 years. So, and much like Tyler Toffoli himself said, When you get to that status, UFA status, you have earned the right to cash in. Now, part of your choice is if you want to win, you have to consider your situation and scenario. Dylan DeMello has a long history of making his defense partner better, whether that's in San Jose as more of a third pairing guy, or whether it's in Ottawa with Thomas Chabot, or whether it's in Winnipeg with Josh Morrissey. Now, I understand the other side of the argument. Does Dylan DeMello have to be on the second shutdown pair, potentially with Brendan Dillon, in order for the Jets to take a step forward as a defense corps? That might be true, but until you have a better option, he's the best option. And Elias Solomonson, I believe, can be that option. But for folks who think he's going from the SHL championship at 19 to the top pairing with Josh Morrissey, there's evidence around the NHL, including someone who played the game last night for the Dallas Stars. Thomas Harley didn't go right onto the top pairing with Miro Heiskanen. He spent way more time with the Texas Stars than he cared to spend. But guess what? It paid off for him, and now he is a top pairing impact player in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And Ezzy, I didn't forget your original question. Ville Heinola.
It's all good. There's a lot to get to at the buffet.
Ville Heinola absolutely needs to be in the top 6, but Ville Heinola is not playing the role of Brendan Dillon, and next year he's not playing the role of Dylan DeMello. Ville Heinola needs to be, whether that's, I'm not saying sheltered on the third pairing, but if he was ready for top 4 minutes, he would have been in the NHL for top 4 minutes this year. Dave, you watched him a lot. And it is terribly unfortunate that he was hurt in the final preseason game. But even if that weren't the case, he was going to be on the Jets' third pairing this year and potentially help the second power play. Things that Declan Chisholm did with the Minnesota Wild after he was claimed off waivers. Now, as I wrote, to me, that's a mistake by Kevin Cheveldayoff, who had a fantastic year. But the reason you are allowed to make that mistake is that you have a player in Ville Heinola that has many of the same characteristics, and you're counting on him to do the things that Declan Chisholm did this year, and you're maybe even counting on him to do those things better than Declan Chisholm did them. Otherwise, maybe Declan Chisholm is solving some of the problems that we're talking about right now. But it's a massive summer for Ville Heinola. And I understand some people think that, he is stagnated. That's not what I think. But what I do think is that if you want, absolutely no doubt, Ville Heinola is going to be in the NHL this year. But if he's not with the Winnipeg Jets, he'll be with someone else. But if you're Ville Heinola, the opportunity to make an impact on the defense corps has never been greater. And that means you have to have the absolute best summer of your life, and you need to go into camp and blow the coaching staff away and show them that you not only want to be a regular player, but that you're going to be running the second power play and not anybody else who's on the roster right now.
Ken Wiebe, our guest Saturday morning. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Kenny, take a deep breath while I do this reset so you can get you worked up again for your next answer. Drew
worked
Mandel,
up. I'm just getting started, buddy. I'm just getting started.
Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, Ken Wiebe. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel.
I can attest to what Ken is talking about, and we'll have that media availability with Ville Heinola up on our YouTube channel very soon. And you're right, Kenny. My question isn't about Ville, but just to add to your point, Mark Morrison talked about it. He said, and something I think it's critical, because I know people were clamoring. They were seeing he was getting the points in the AHL, but when they don't watch the games, they forget that there's other things, other elements to playing defense than just points. And so, it took a while for him. I know he didn't want to admit it, but it took a while for him to get back to being who he is as a defenseman. And it really almost took to the end of the season till we really kind of saw him return to the form. I mean, he missed 4 months of the season. He was in peak form. He made the team, according to Rick Bowness. But ultimately, when you're that far behind and everybody else is that far ahead of you, and you're starting from the starting point, and everyone's already had 4 months of the season, you're not getting it back after a month or two. So, he sounded like a motivated player. He was motivated last year's exit meetings. He said he was going to have a good summer. This year, he did say he's going to get away from and turn his phone off. So, Kenny, if you try and get a hold of him in the next couple of weeks, you're not going to get a hold of him. He's with family in Finland.
He'll be golfing.
He'll be unavailable.
The Finnish golf tour is huge this time of year.
But he did say he's going to, get back to that same sort of mentality that he had last summer, and that'll be good for him, and that'll be good for Jets fans. But my question, getting it back to other players, is the comments by Connor Hellebuyck. I thought they were fascinating, and of course, there's nothing folks in this market love more than his opening sort of dialogue where he said,
Are you sure they love it?
Well, I'm being sarcastic there, Kenny, but yeah, but no, but it's not even that. It was actually more his comment in response to Sean that I thought was very revealing when he talked about his mentality about, in game 4, how he thought he had to steal it for the team, that it needed to be all about him. And it's funny, I thought it was incredibly revealing, and I didn't take it to be selfish in any way. I just thought about it's a guy who, it's an individual position. People forget, where it's a team game, but goaltending is such an individual position, and it's so impactful on the game. I don't know. What was your takeaway from his comments? Because I thought they were incredibly revealing, incredibly insightful.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it was very interesting for sure. And, I'm not surprised he opened the way that he did, but if he had only left it at that, I would have been concerned. No, and again,
mic drop out.
I'm happy for him to feel that way. But for me, the most important thing that he said was that he finally said, I need to be better. That was what hit me the most. We know Connor mentality is a, power of positivity. And hey, I live in that world, guys. I'm it's not glass half full. It's 15th, 16th full if it's not absolutely full.
Unless Kenny, unless you're on the show and then you drank the water. So then you have to
I was going to say, what about Sean's glass? I think Sean's glass. How much water is in Sean's glass?
I've got 2 glasses.
I'm ready for overtime, boys. Let's not forget our show after Game 5 ended at 3:53 a.m.
I saw that,
Kenny.
I'm ready to go as far as we need to go, and I know that one of your commenters made the joke. If you have a 2-hour show, all you need is one guest. But I'm not here to steal the entire 2 hours. Anyways, I like the commentary. And I also, I love the fact that he said he wanted to, steal a game because he needed to. But now what you need to do if you're Connor Hellebuyck is you can keep that mentality, but adjust the pressure points. That's the key for Hellebuyck moving forward, because you obviously, it seems like he was admitting that the pressure kind of got to him. He wanted to be in the game, but he heaped so much pressure on himself that it just didn't happen for him. And hey, that's a good admission. And I would also have been fascinated. I think that, and again, not to get off track here, but I think Sean was asking him about his personal process, and and that's good that he shared, because Connor he's a very smart person, but he doesn't let you inward very often, which is why I appreciated the fact that he was so, outspoken about it and emotional, because a lot of people look at Connor like he's just some robot that he's always going to feel like his game is great and no problem. And, and he even said it between games 1 and 2. He said he was feeling so good that it's basically a fluke when you score on me, which to me had some tinges of 2018 attached to it. But at the same time, I think that the reflection that he had was very important. And hey, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, we saw the stats. You guys follow Mike Kelly. 10 screenshot goals and tips.
Yeah.
That's hard to contend with. But
that has to be a record, Kenny. Like, that's ridiculous. That's a lot of screens.
It's a pretty high number. And involved in the 24 total were a lot of backdoor taps, and 6 of those were on the power play, at least 6 of them. And let's be honest, there was a 7th because Neil Pionk was 1 second out of the box, but not in the play. So that's a factor. But if you're an elite goalie, and Connor Hellebuyck is an elite goalie, and the people that saying that he's not, they need to wake up.
They need to wake up.
But if you're Connor Hellebuyck, you have to find a way to get your shoulder on one of those bar down shots, or you need to, get around the screen. And, when Neil Pionk accidentally, redirects a puck, you need to kick right to left and get your pad down before it goes into the back of the net. Of course, it's not your fault, but Connor said it himself. It's not about the stats. It's about making one more save than the guy at the other end of the rink. He didn't do that in the series after game 1. So of course he has to wear part of it, but it's not as simple as if you just tuned into the box score and said, oh, well, Connor Hellebuyck, 501 goals against an 870 save percentage, obviously cost the Jets the series. That's not true. He has to wear part of the responsibility because he plays the most important position. But why were the Avalanche able to get to the net for those 10 deflected shots and screens? Because they don't defend the front of the net well enough, which is why you need Brendan Dillon or someone like Brendan Dillon, and you probably need a second guy that's good at doing that and keeping the front of the net clear.
Well,
so the problem for the Jets is that you need to keep the front of the net clear, but you also need to improve your exits. So find guys that are on the Vegas defense, right? You need to find big guys and mobile guys that also keep the front of the net open. You don't need 6 of them, but you need at least 2 of them.
Well, let me ask you this, Ken. I mean, we've talked about the defense, and but if the Jets can only re-sign one of Dillon or DeMello, who is priority given everything else that you have to consider in context? The Jets are weaker on the right side. They have more talent coming up in the system on the left, where potentially Dylan Samberg is ready to take a bigger role, and Ville Heinola is ready to take an NHL role. So that maybe strikes against Brendan Dillon. So from your perspective, which one is more of the priority between the two?
Yeah, Drew, I'm going to apologize in advance here.
Hedge?
Well, no, Hustler asked me this yesterday, and sleeping on it didn't give me the answer. I've been trying to figure this out for 3 years already.
Right.
And all of the factors. Like, this is simple. If Brendan Dillon were a right-handed shot player who was 31 instead of 33, then of course he'd be the priority. But all the other things that you said, Elias Solomonson is coming, but the Jets don't have a right-handed first-pairing defenseman on their roster right now. Unless Brendan Dillon is going to play the offside, which he has in the past, unless Brendan Dillon is becoming Josh Morrissey's partner, then they're on a level playing field. I mean, and again, I'm not saying that to be on the fence. This is accurate. Right now, they're 2 and 3 on the depth chart, and it's more like 2A and 2B because of all the qualities that are there. And guys, they're not just good players. They have been an important piece of the culture turnover that we've seen. Incredible guys who have been quiet. Dylan DeMello, a little bit more of a quiet leader. Brendan Dillon, I think, is a little bit more of a vocal leader.
Okay,
and they're both...
Let me interrupt you for a second, Ken. Sorry. So we're talking about, we were in agreement that the Jets need to upgrade the defense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, based on the conversation that we're having, we're also advocating for, to some extent, running back the same defense with regard to the Dillon and DeMello, unless Schmidt and Pionk are being sent away from the organization.
No, and that's fair, Drew. But what I'm saying is that if you're trying to upgrade, I don't think the upgrades are coming in the 2-3 slots. I think the upgrades have to be coming in the, whatever the number 4, 5, 6 slots. And yes, Dylan Samberg can move in, but Dylan Samberg's not playing like Brendan Dillon yet. And again, part of it, Dave, I think you would agree, even though he played some right side on the Moose in the past and at university. Dylan had some hiccups in the playoffs, and Dave, this reminded me of the series with Milwaukee, where Johnny Kovacevic and Dylan Samberg were the best pair during the season, and they had some trouble in that series. Right? I mean,
Chisholm was the best. Ironically, Chisholm was the best defenseman, better than Heinola, better than Kovacevic, and better than Samberg. So Ken, I'm with you. And I never understood the reason. I understand he wanted to get Logan Stanley in, but moving Dylan Samberg at the end of the season to the right side where he's not as comfortable didn't make a lot of sense to me, because he spent the majority of the year and the majority of his career as a left side guy
and did well. I mean, that was the other problem with, I understand you wanting to bring, we just talked about it, like Logan Stanley can clear the front of the net, and he's a big strong guy. Like we said, if he has all of the qualities that a team would be looking for in terms of adding those components. It just hasn't happened consistently enough. And to his credit, it happened more consistently down the stretch, but it didn't really happen into the playoffs. Now, I don't just say it's as easy as saying, well, that means Logan Stanley can't do it. maybe if Logan Stanley wasn't a healthy scratch for 43 of the first 53, maybe he could have done it. So now it's shared. It's shared responsibility. Logan had to give them a reason to play him more, but it's chicken and egg, guys. If you had played more, now having to do it at full speed, playing 8 of the last 11 or 10 or whatever it was, great. But he never played against teams playing at warp speed the way the Avalanche play. So I don't blame the player completely, even though I always say I think player execution is a bigger factor than tactical or coaching or all of those things. But at the same time, you're right, Drew. But Drew, the other problem with your theory, both Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon want to be here. And I think you could sign them at a reasonable rate. It's not going to be cheap, but it's in order to replace them, to get a number 2 guy, you're looking at a north of $6 million player. And a player that wants to come here unless you trade for that player.
So let's talk about the trade, because that brings me to the question about Nikolaj Ehlers. Because Nikolaj Ehlers was certainly, we know that the playoffs didn't go the way he wanted them to. We know that his usage has been up and down and all around and not really consistent. So what of Nikolaj Ehlers, and how does that play into the need to upgrade the back end?
Yeah, I mean, I'd also remind folks that some of that is shift length, and the number of shifts with Kyle Connor are often the same, but the numbers are down. And obviously the biggest, wide gulf in minutes is our power play minutes. Mm-hmm. And, we thought this was all 4 of us thought this was the year that they would find a way to make it work on the top unit. And that was basically abandoned within the first month of the season. Right. So, that's a problem. In terms of getting that usage up. So it's super interesting, guys. Nikolaj Ehlers loves it here. That's obvious. Spent 9 years here already in the organization. But again, if you are a player who views yourself the way that he does, and he should, as a top 10 pick, you probably want to be in a place where you're going to be on the first power play unit, whether you're on the top line or not. So of course that's going to be a factor in the discussions. And I know some people had their nose out of joint for what Nikolaj Ehlers said in his meeting. But again, he hadn't been told by Kevin Cheveldayoff what the plan was for him next year at that point. So when he was saying, I don't know, it wasn't that I don't know if I'm going to be here. I think it was, I don't know how the Jets view me in terms of my long-term role with this team and what the next contract might even look like starting July 1st when he's eligible to sign one. So yeah, these are the facts. Nikolaj Ehlers is a great person. He's also underperformed in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and he would be the first person to tell you that. And I get it. Chicken and egg would have some factor in that discussion. But someone as talented as Nikolaj Ehlers, having 4 goals and 14 points in 37 playoff games, it was legitimately almost unbelievable, guys. 4 goals in 37 games for a guy who is one of the fastest players in the NHL, and I'm not exaggerating. One of the best players in terms of zone entries. One of the most dangerous players on the ice when he is playing at full speed. And I understand, hey, puck luck is a thing, but we're not talking about a 1 or 2 series sample size here. This is, what is it? 7 years out of 9 or for sure 6 out of the 9 in the playoffs, if not 7. So, and I'm also here to tell you, that bothers Ehlers more than anybody else saying that he can't perform in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I don't think that is a fair assessment. He has not performed at his level to this point. Do I think he can perform down the road with the Jets or somebody else? Yes, I do. But in order for that to happen, he needs to make it happen. So that's as simple as it gets. And would it be easier if he was the one banging one-timers from where Kyle Connor is? Of course it would. But that's not changing anytime soon. So I do think that he, on top of all of those things, he is clearly the best trade chip the Jets have in order to A, improve that top 4 that we were just talking about, right, or B, maybe bring in a forward, whether that's a center or whatever else with some term. Again, we'll dive into this. We've got months to dive into this, but off the top of my head, the New York Islanders have turned into a team that likes to score, more than they defend. How about it, my first thought would be Ehlers for Ryan Pulock, guys,
Sure.
and not because he's local. Because
shout out to Grandview, right?
Shout out to Grandview.
Yeah.
Dauphin
too. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Brandon, like he's got lots of folks that support him. I think he is going into the last year of his deal as well. This is a size, fairly big right shot D, big shot. Defense has worked incredibly hard on his defending. Whether Ryan Pulock is on the shutdown pair with Dylan Sandberg or Brendan Dillon or whatever else, that would open up a world of possibilities for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, having said that, you would need Pulock to sign a contract extension, I think, in order to make a deal.
He signed a big money deal in New York, Kenny.
Oh, sorry. Okay, good for him then.
Yeah, he's
bad research. I'm glad you looked at it.
He's under
Kenny.
contract
If it helps, makes you feel better. I didn't realize.
I'm sorry. I'm going to say that's what I meant. You need a guy that's already under contract.
That's right.
Ehlers is the guy that needs the extension.
And not only that, he's willing to waive his no trade clause to come here.
Kenny, we'll get rid of this whole part in post production.
But sorry, that's the type of player is what you would be looking for. Maybe a younger, maybe a little bit more mobile, but that's the type of player. And the reason why I say this, Patrick Waugh obviously would have, some experience. Would he not have some experience watching Nikolaj Ehlers from his days in the queue? So, I mean, to me, we often used to talk about Patrick Laine being a fit with the Islanders, a team that didn't score much. Now they've sort of been a team in transition. Ehlers with, somebody like Matt Barzal and Anders Lee would be, pretty frightening for opponents in the Metro. But so that's the type of deal you would be looking at, like a top 4 deal. And would the Jets love to, get one of their first round picks back or get some of the draft capital back? Of course they would. But, and maybe they can get a draft pick along with something like that. But I don't. And again, let me clarify. I don't see the Jets trading Ehlers just for a draft pick. That doesn't make sense with where the Jets are in terms of their window. Right. You're not saying to Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele, we're competing, and then trade a top 6 forward for a first round draft pick that's not going to hit probably for 2 years. So anyways, it's going to be a fascinating thing. Do I think it's more likely than not Ehlers is traded? I don't know, but I would say that, unless they're willing to trade somebody else, I mean, you just said it, Drew. They can't run back the defense core, and they can't really run back the core itself. Now, I'm not saying you got to trade all of the core, but I think you have to change the mix a little bit in order to try to upgrade some of those other areas. And we also know, I mean, as he said about Sean Monahan, the Jets also have a decision to make there. I mean, and
that was going to be, sorry, Kenny, just to quickly jump in, like, that's going to be my last question. And as I'm asking that, I don't know if you want to take another.
I can stay. Sorry,
your water.
What I meant to say is I just haven't got my fingers over to say yes, I am available for another half an hour. Of course, we've got time. We have time. It's not nice enough to be golfing today, so let's keep the conversation going here.
Absolutely, Kenny. And the question I wanted to ask you is, you've already kind of hinted towards this, that you think Sean Monahan is a good candidate to re-sign with the Jets. What do you see, or how do you see a contract? Is it a 3-year deal, a 4-year deal? Like how do you think this is going to shake out here?
Yeah, I mean, and again, I haven't spoken to the agent, and I don't think the agent would be revealing his tactical ideas anyway. But you just have to look at it this way: Sean Monahan was just on a pair of, he was just on a show me contract that paid him $1.85 and $2 million with his bonus. So, unless you're on an entry level contract, guys, not a lot of number 2 centers in the NHL making $2 million, nor should they be. So it's going to be a raise. To me, you're at least doubling the contract. So I would say it's more likely to be in the 4.5 to, would he like it to be north of 5? Of course. Let's just put it this way. I don't think it will not hit 6, but it will not be 4. So I would think it's somewhere in the middle. Could it get to 5? Maybe, but it doesn't necessarily have to. That's in terms of term. Would a team prefer 3? Yes, but if you're the Jets, you have to go to, I think you would be comfortable going to 4 because Yes, Brad Lambert has played center, and I want to transition over to him when I'm done this answer about Monahan, because we've got Dave here, and he has watched Brad Lambert all year long, and not just like Jets fans who saw him play one game and said, "Man, where's that guy been? He should have been in the NHL all year. What's happening here? Look at the speed." Anyways,
he's bringing the claws out on Saturday morning. I like this.
Well,
I know.
I've covered both leagues, and I know how people think.
I know.
We've got a 24-year sample size of how people feel about American Hockey League prospects. Anyways, Monahan is going to get
quarterbacks
at least 3 years, and I think it has to be 4 in order for him to get a sign here. I mean, I don't think it's the Winnipeg discount, or it's the surcharge tax, I guess, in this case, but. If Mark Scheifele is about to go into a 7-year deal, which he is, and you want to be having someone to ride shotgun with Mark Scheifele, because that's what they've wanted the whole time, whether it's Brian Little, whether it's Paul Stastny, whether it's Pierre-Luc Dubois, who I understand people are having happy times, pointing their finger at currently.
You think they buy him out?
No, I don't. I think that he comes back with a different mindset, maybe, let's say. And from talking to people, he sounded pretty humbled by the experience here. And we know that he put on a brave face when he came through Winnipeg, and I honestly feel that he feels that way. But anyways, back to Sean Monahan. Monahan, and again, did he have a tougher playoff than most expected? Yes, he did. But he also was one of the more dangerous players for the Jets. I think 13 shots on net, had a crossbar. So I didn't see this big dip in his play like some people seem to say, oh, well, this was obviously going to be coming. Was he skating the same way and as smoothly as he was late in the season? No. But guys, when I was leaving the Jets room after Game 5, Sean Monahan was coming out of the back room with the doctor, and I don't think he was having his year-end physical. So much like other players, there was probably something nagging him, and that would sort of line up with his impact in the series compared to his impact in the final couple months after he was acquired. So I think he is an important part because he fits in a number of ways. Even though, most people just see the cliches and the scrums, like this is a guy that fits in on a culture side. He's played in Canadian markets. He is a guy who is a perfect complementary number 2 guy, even though he has played as a number 1 previously. He can score goals. He helps the power play. He plays in a position of need in the bumper position. He is their best face-off player. He contributes to the penalty kill. And by the way, his 5-on-5 minutes are pretty darn good as well. So, I mean, again, Drew, to your point about earlier, if you don't sign Sean Monahan,
right,
who are you going to find as a number 2 center in a $4 million range that checks all of the boxes that I just mentioned to you? Yep. Those guys are making $8 million when they're 25 years old. So, again, much like some people that said, oh, how the hell can you give up a first-round pick for Sean Monahan? Well, because he immediately made 5 areas of your team better. That's why.
And now you can sign him to an extension, right?
Yes.
In an ideal world.
That's why. So anyways, he's an important player, and I know we're going to break here. Let's save Lambert for after the reset.
Okay. Hey, are we going? Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to try. Drew, I'm going to try to. I'm not only going to the buffet.
Well,
I'm going to host the show too. I'm going to.
We got Coach John Gogens at 10:30. So why don't we
take a break and we'll come back with more of Kenny Wiebe.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on this Saturday morning.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
It's all over, folks, and the run has come to an end. You'll be so far away.
A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in over 30 years.
And the Cup will stay south of the border.
Maybe it's time we try something different. This playoff season, let's cheer with the fans we've always cheered against. Team up for the Cup at Boston Pizza.
Hey Winnipeg, Wendell Clark here. I'm coming out there May 28th for the Rady JCC dinner. Myself, Dougie Gilmore, Grant Fuhr. Some good storytelling about Winnipeg beating us up when we used to come there. See you there.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man. There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Saturday morning, welcome back to Kenny and the Curves. Ken Wiebe,
Yes.
Drew Mandel, Ginsburg. Not sure what happened to Dave Minogue, but I think
I want to bring up Brad Lambert and he bails out. What's the deal?
He's back. I was just resetting my computer. I had to make sure it was a little glitchy, so I figured I'd do a quick reset, Kenny.
there you go. Kenny, you were melting Dave's computer into it. That was the
Well,
problem.
I got so excited at the prospect of talking about the Moose that I was like, my computer literally overloaded. That's how excited I was to finally have something exciting to talk about. So let's talk about Brad Lambert. You got a chance to ask, Kevin Cheveldayoff about him on Thursday. Yep. And, look, we talk about development and you're right. I mean, everybody is in a rush and, look, when they're seeing what, Logan Stankoven is doing in Dallas, folks get excited at what prospects can do. Brad Lambert had an exceptional year. His first year in North America as a center in the pro ranks. Of course, he did that a little bit overseas, and did that in the junior ranks, obviously, with Seattle 2 years ago. But from your perspective, what do you see in terms of like a plan for Brad Lambert moving forward? Obviously, Nikita Chibrikov, he's going to take more time in terms of seasoning, but specifically on Brad Lambert, if I guess to kind of tie it into the last question, that Sean Monahan, if he doesn't sign, do you see Brad Lambert as that 2C option? Rather than trying to force him to become a winger now, kind of like what they did with Jack Roslovic, right? Like Jack Roslovic was the center in the AHL, really good. And then you put him onto the wing in the NHL. Do you see Lambert transitioning and maintaining this, idea of him being a center when he makes that jump to the NHL?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I didn't watch him enough to know what his defensive game looks like at the American League level, and that will be again, we're not talking out of school here, guys.
Yeah.
Brad Lambert's biggest issue at the NHL level is not going to be if he can keep up, because people have to keep up to him. It's not that. It is if you are going to be able to play below the dots in the NHL at his size, even with his speed. What impressed me most, and again, this is a small sample size, but what impressed me most about Brad in terms of when he broke onto the scene in that game against the Calgary Flames in the preseason, where folks were calling for him to be on the team last 2 Octobers ago.
Yeah.
What I saw in Brad Lambert was someone who is far more confident in his routes. He knows where to be. Like, he's not just flying around like someone who doesn't know where he's supposed to be going. He knows what the routes are, and he knows where to get to on the ice. I thought his vision has improved, and that means, and that's a compliment, because trying to do those things at that speed is not easy. It's not as easy as just skate as fast as you can and see what happens out there. You need to be, timing at the right time. I thought he was good on his breakouts. I thought he's an explosive type of player. He was everything that the Jets could have used in the series against the Avalanche, where they were not fast enough, but he wasn't ready to be doing that against, Nathan MacKinnon. Like, if you get Brad Lambert on the ice against Nathan MacKinnon in Denver, I'm here to say it's probably, and that's not a knock on Lambert. It didn't go well for the most seasoned Winnipeg Jets at times. And the Jets actually did a pretty good job against MacKinnon at 5-on-5. But what I am telling you is that Brad Lambert, when he came up to play the Vancouver Canucks, didn't find himself on the ice against JT Miller. JT Miller wasn't playing, but I'm talking about a big, strong, physical force that you have to try to check. Now, of course, if you can make that other guy check you and chase you around on the ice all night, of course that can work. I'm not certain that he's going to be a centerman or a right winger yet, Dave, and it may depend on if they can sign Sean Monahan or someone else. But if Brad Lambert is going to be the second line center, you better be insulating him with a winger like Arturi Lehkonen. And I don't mean Lehkonen in particular. I mean someone with the skill set of Lehkonen. The Jets have had guys like this before, whether it's Michael Frolik, a guy like that, a guy that can score, but a guy who is so defensively, or Andrew Kopp, like a guy like that, a guy that is so defensively responsible that you're going to be able to gloss over all of the young player hiccups that will come with someone like that.
Nino Niederreiter, Vlad Nemesnikov, guys like that who are on the line, who are on the roster currently.
Yeah, big, strong guys. And I mean, free agency, like I'm curious about a guy like Jake DeBrusk. I mean, Jake DeBrusk is coming from a program that's, pretty sound. He's going to attract some attention on the marketplace. Big, strong guy, played in Swift Current, Western Canadian kind of guy. Again, to play wing, not to play center, but big body that can skate. So, could you envision a second line of Jake DeBrusk, Brad Lambert, and Cole Perfetti, or something or maybe even Nino Niederreiter, as you mentioned? I mean, that's interesting to me. But the biggest thing for me, guys, and we just saw it. Stankoven's a great example, Dave. But as you know, that's 3/4 of the year in the American Hockey League.
Yeah,
and I'm here to tell you, in another year where Logan Stankoven's Kamloops Blazers weren't hosting the Memorial Cup, Logan Stankoven might have been in the NHL last season out of training camp. Right. So the fact that they marinated him to be such a sound player at the American League level, and hey, some people don't pay as close attention as you, Dave. Dallas has a guy who just got named MVP of the American
League. Yeah.
That is also going to be on the team last year. So the integration of some people are going to look up and say, oh, hey, they got Wyatt Johnston, Maverick Bourque, and Logan Stankoven in the lineup. Yeah, that's true. But they were all spaced out one year after another. So Cole Perfetti spacing out, Brad Lambert, and now, whoever the next player is going to be. And I love Chibrikov in that game too, Dave. I know he's a feisty guy along with having ability to finish. The only thing with Chibrikov is I think he probably needs another year of seasoning and keep working on his skating before he's a full-time NHLer. But that's the kind of guy that can help round out a roster as well because of the feistiness. But again, at that size, playing a feisty game in the American League, which is difficult, becomes even more difficult at that next level. So I think that would be the only thing that I wouldn't say worried about, but he's going to have to show durability, and he has done it at the American Hockey League level. Again, and I don't want to play the host here, but Dave, how did Colby Barlow look at the American Hockey League level? Speaking of future prospects who are, probably more than a year away, but some people think that, what happens at training camp can Colby Barlow have a good camp and make the Jets this year based on the injuries that he dealt with?
Am I being asked a question on this show? This is fantastic. Well, hold on, Ken,
I told you it's a non-hostile takeover.
And Kenny, please host. We've been looking for an ultimate host for years.
Hold on 1 second. One second. 1 second. And perfect show.
See you later. Goodbye.
Curves. I love it.
Anyways, so Kenny, I will end the Brad Lambert segment though with the words of not me, but his head coach. When I asked him about his what he saw from him as a center in the AHL this year, he said, I saw his growth as a center in the D zone mostly, being in the right position at the right time, having some timing to his game to get the puck out of the D zone. So to the point you're making.
Sounds familiar.
Exactly. But it's that idea of nice one, Tim, bro. But that's the whole point. The point is
we was spelled wrong. That's the only problem. So they get an automatic fail in journalism.
I've been called worse, guys. I've been called worse.
On this show, in fact, you've been called worse.
True.
Anyways, Kenny. So yeah, so it is an interesting development curve on Brad Lambert, but I just thought that was a good way to kind of end that
beautiful.
And just like I said, in terms of Barlow, I mean, speed is definitely going to be his thing that he needs to focus on. We talked to him, at the end of the season. He got the 3 games in with the Moose. Didn't play any playoff games. He looked good. I mean, first of all, his shot, kind of Patrick Laine-esque on the power play, really good. We know he had 40 goals. with Owen Sound this year. My guess is, much like they've done with guys like Mark Scheifele, is he'll come to training camp and then he'll go back. Obviously, the AHL is not an option for him next year. But yeah, I think, it was funny. The first time we saw him play, we saw a guy who just didn't want to make a mistake. He was just kind of getting his feet wet at the pro game and just kind of wanted to be impressive, but not make mistakes. And that's what he talked about. He wanted to just kind of earn the coach's respect and that trust. And I think he did. I think, like I said, he's got he talked about his east-west in terms of his movement, which I thought was some really interesting insight that he provided in terms of himself and what he needs to work on specifically in terms of the summer. But if I was going to say anything, I'd probably say it's probably a foot, like a speed issue, just in terms of like, that's what he needs to work on. So I think Barlow's got a fantastic shot. I think he'll be a great young player soon for the Jets, but I think my guess is he'll come to training camp, go back to Owen Sound, dominate there. And then you're talking about him with the Moose the next year.
Yeah, right on. And again, just for folks who have forgotten, I mean, Colby Barlow getting sick on the day that he signed his ELC was costly in the fact that it prevented him from getting into any preseason games last year. So you're kind of like, not to say that you wouldn't have been nervous for that American Hockey League debut, but if you've already made your NHL preseason debut, you're probably less nervous when you're coming at an end of a season than you might be if you had not played, any preseason games, which is, he basically had his whole camp taken away from him and all the time that you would have been spending with those NHLers and getting the tips that Mark Scheifele got the first 2 years. I mean, he was still around the team, but it wasn't around them as much as he would have been. And, I had a great talk with Colby during the year.
I'll just read you the quotes directly from Colby.
Yeah, I love it.
Can go, but it's just, so this is what he said in his exit meetings. He said, or his end of season, I should say, just continuing to work on my speed and my agility. I think I'm a powerful skater, but not the cleanest right now. And then he said, I want to find a better stride going east to west. And then this was the highlight. He said, come back with more of a man's body, which was amusing given the fact that he had a full beard and looks nothing like, a 19-year-old kid. Anyways, just wanted to get that one in there.
No, good. It's important.
And we got a scouting report up from Stacy too, who lives in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Beautiful. No, he's a very good prospect for sure. And again, I'm expecting him to have an impact, but again, it's on the window side. His impact is 2 to 3 years away, not 5 months away for folks, like just to start. And again, for those same folks who thought Rutger McGroarty was just going to come in and replace Cole Perfetti on the second line, that's just not how it's going to work. Especially now that he didn't sign. Yeah. there are stones. And again, I like I said, Mike did, Mike McIntyre, my colleague, was down in St. Paul, had all the conversations, but I've been sniffing around also. And this is for folks who, and I'm sure you guys laid it out at the time, Rutger McGroarty was not coming to play in the NHL as a top 6 player if he had signed this year. There was a legitimate possibility he would have needed to play next season, at least part of that season, with the Manitoba Moose, doing the same thing Colby Barlow is going to be doing, and that's working on his skating. And for folks who aren't comprehending, these guys are drafted in the first round to be impact players in the NHL, but you don't just jump in and become an impact player immediately in all situations, especially when you have parts of your game that you need to work on at a time when the game has never been faster. These guys have already taken strides when it comes to their skating, but the baseline is now a lot higher than it used to be for the NHL. And for Rutger, and for, again, this is not a knock on folks, but he missed significant development time this year. The NCAA season is short as it is, given the gruesome nature of the injury that he had and being, in the hospital for as long as he was. You missed a couple of important months. So the fact that he wants to go back isn't there's a breakdown in the communication or in the relationship with the Jets. This is a guy that Michigan is important to him. He spent a considerable amount of time there, and this is a leader who wants to lead. So this has got nothing to do, or very little to do, with the Jets. It has very much to do with his scenario and situation and where he would have been playing. And, he may have been around as an extra or black ace during the playoffs, but he was not likely going to be a roster player unless something had changed dramatically, unless there were a bunch of injuries. but that doesn't mean he's still not a great prospect. This is a guy who has won at every level that he's played. He brings some of the qualities that we were talking about the Jets' top six will need: size, power, willingness to get to the net, leadership. But it's just he's still young. He's 20 years old, guys. So and roster's probably arriving before Colby Barlow. Dave, do you not agree?
And I was just trying to tweet that the buffet was still open and you were still on it. What was the question?
I said Rutger McGroarty's probably going to arrive before Colby Barlow. Like for me, guys, he's going to be
100%,
signed.
Kenny.
When the Michigan Wolverines season is over next year.
Yeah, he'll be signed.
Rutger's coming to join the Jets. Now, again, I'm not saying that means he got an auto entry into the lineup, but he's probably getting his game, and then he's going to be, and then seeing what happens from there. Again, because he's a great prospect. Sorry, I didn't mean to shift this into Prospect Central, but
let me ask you one last question.
Important things.
We're and one
8
last
minutes,
question.
only last one. Come on, we still got time for a few.
We got to take a break before John Gogens comes on.
Kenny's not golfing today.
To like 5 minutes with this. With
when
this
Kenny's
answer.
not golfing, he can give us 2 hours of his time on a Saturday.
Exactly, I know, but
this is what happens
Cole
when
Perfetti.
I say yes. Oh yeah, good.
No, that's the.
I might need the 5 minutes now.
Well, there you go. That's why I'm giving it to you. I'm giving you. I'll start the clock behind me, and then I'll buzz you out when you're done. What's the off-season priority for Cole Perfetti? I mean, this is a guy who had 19 goals. 19 goals by anybody's definition is a pretty good season. Yet at the end of the season, you can't help but feel that there may have been there's a disappointing element to how it all ended up. So, what's off-season priority for Cole Perfetti?
Yeah, I mean, similar to last season's off-season priority, where Cole changed his trainer and was working on adding some speed. Cole does need to continue to add speed. We know that. That's the one area of his game that would not be considered above average for me. All of the other qualities are very high, including his defensive play, which, for some people didn't believe that he's a good defensive player. I think he actually, because of his smarts, he actually gets to the right spots. Now, does he win every single board battle? No. I mean, that isn't how it works for young players who are adjusting to that level. Cole's season as a whole, yes, 19 goals is a great year for anyone who actually just finished his first full season. And I haven't forgotten that he was in the NHL for 2 years prior to that. But both of those seasons ended in season-ending injuries. And Drew, what that means is that games 60 to 82, those are the hardest games to play. And by my calculations, he never got to play in them until this year. And I understand that there were 11 healthy scratches in that period of time this year, but that's because he hadn't played in those games previously to see how the intensity ratcheted up and how you needed to elevate your game. Now, Drew, this again, completely different players. This reminds me of the Patrick Laine 30-goal season. 18 of those goals were in 1 month. That means you had 12 in the other. You had 12 in the other 5 months of the season that year, and 18 in 1 month. Cole Perfetti, the disparity was not that high, but I think 14 of them were in the first 34 games. So again, you guys know I'm not the best with math, but if he finished with 71 games and 14 were in the first 34 games, that means he had 5 goals in a
37 games.
There you go. Thank you for helping me out. Otherwise, we would have been here till after 10:30.
I was about to pull out the abacus, Kenny.
Abacus would have been helpful. And again, I understand he wasn't playing 20 minutes a night, but one of the most important factors for Cole this year, Drew, and he told it to me on day 1 of training camp. I think Dave was standing beside me. I want to play in as close to 82 games as I can. I would say that 71 is pretty close to 82. Now, would he have preferred to avoid the 11 healthy scratches? Of course he would. But there was a long dry spell that some folks have conveniently forgotten. And Cole came, the most important thing for the Jets and for Cole Perfetti is that he left that dry spell in the dust and became a dangerous player when the games are the hardest. So for me, that's his biggest takeaway. Now, of course, you're ticked off that you didn't play in those 11 games. Of course, you're ticked off that you didn't get the 20th goal to get the $200,000 bonus. Of course you are. But it's not only the coaching staff that has to wear not getting to 20. Cole went 22 games with having 2 assists, right? Dave, is that not the number? It was for surely after a quarter of the season.
a quarter of the season for a player that talented to not score, the player has to wear some of that responsibility. And the fact that Cole worked his ass off to be ready when his number was called down the stretch and then played well in the playoffs in his look is important in the big picture. Now, again, for folks who don't think that I criticize Rick Bowness, Cole Perfetti should have been playing in game 4, if not sooner. Yes. But Cole did a great job of getting himself ready for the most important games. And hey, I talked to Cole the day after his first healthy scratch as an NHLer, and it was heartbreaking for him to go through. He told me that night in Buffalo, he didn't want it to ever happen again. It happened 10 more times. But to me, that's fuel. That's not I'm taking my puck and going home. How could I ever be scratched? This is a guy who wants to come back and add another half step to his speed. And I'm here to tell you right now, Cole Perfetti is going to lead, much like I said about Ville Heinola. Cole Perfetti is going to be arriving in training camp and saying, you're not taking me out of the top 6. If anything, you're putting me on the top line this next season. That's how I see it. Now, we've been talking about centers. Is Cole an option to be a second line center next year like he was this year coming out of camp? Sure, he's on the depth chart until we see what happens otherwise. But I think Cole can make his biggest impact as a winger at the NHL level, and that's where I expect him to be. But I expect Cole to be north of 20 goals next year as long as he stays healthy.
I was looking for a gong sound effect, but I don't actually have one.
I heard it in my ear. 3, 2, 1.
There you go. Thank you. Ken Wiebe, Wiebe's World on Twitter,
Buffet
Winnipeg Press. The buffet is closed. It's been
only
raided.
shrimp tails are all that's left. Shrimp tails are all that's left, people. Have a great weekend. Always great to be with the Curves. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks so much, Kenny.
Enjoy the off-season, boys. We'll talk again.
We'll talk again soon. Ken Wiebe, there he goes. This is the Illegal Curve.
Mailbag is open. Sorry, mailbag is open.
Yes.
Free press mailbag is open. Sorry.
Check note 3.
Last promotion.
Send
It's
your
on
email.
illegalcurve.com.
Mail. Ken accepts mail.
Yeah, send Kenny an email.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
It's all over, folks, and the run has come to an end.
You've been so far away.
A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in over 30 years.
And the Cup will stay south of the border.
Maybe it's time we try something different. This playoff season, let's cheer with the fans we've always cheered against. Team up for the Cup at Boston Pizza.
Hey Winnipeg, Wendell Clark here. I'm coming out there May 28th for the Rady JCC dinner. Myself, Dougie Gilmore, Grant Fuhr. Some good storytelling about Winnipeg beating us up when we used to come there. See you there.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Bottom of hour number 2. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning. I was a hell of an hour with our good friend Ken Wiebe of the Winnipeg Free Press. We keep the good times going. We're pleased to welcome to the program John Gogens. Does great work with our friends at Daily Faceoff, breaking down some video and really delving deep into the strategic side of systems and playing of teams. John, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you?
Morning, guys. How are you guys?
We are doing
We're good.
Fine and dandy. Thank you. Appreciate you joining us this morning. John, we obviously brought you on. We'll start with the Winnipeg Jets and the Colorado Avalanche series that just ended earlier this week. You did a great job, as I said, breaking things down for Daily Faceoff. Let me start, I guess, going back to the beginning of that series, that game 1, which was, of course, just sheer chaos on the ice. And it seemed like after that, the Avs were able to find their game in a far better manner than the Jets ever were. From your perspective and your insight in watching the video, was it the Jets just being out of sorts, or was it a specific Colorado strategy that made the Jets be out of sorts?
Well, I think right from the beginning, the depth, right? Like we could talk about who might be missing. Jonathan Drouin, who I'm very familiar with, I've coached him since he was about 11 years old. Missing a piece like that, a player that basically is a 60-point guy, and not missing a beat really is the definition of having depth. And when you got guys like Lehkonen who always show up when it's playoff time, when you add at the trade deadline without trading for the player in Nichushkin, who puts up 7 goals in a series, again, you talk about depth. And Jared Bednar does a phenomenal job, very similarly to John Cooper. They have a real good feel for their bench, and they don't always keep the lines exactly together and completely intact. And it's almost like they build pairs within their lines, and then it's like, who can really complement the big dogs here and there? And they spread that love, and they've got a great feel for their bench. So on the other side, there is not a shift off for any of those defensemen. People can speak ad nauseum about matchups, but it's really tough. What are you going to do? You're going to try to match this line, that line, next line. At some point, you just got to compete. You just got to play. And what becomes probably more important is the quality of line changes, the puck management, the game management, and the emotional part of it. And I just think that Colorado, I did a preview where Winnipeg did a phenomenal job of constantly mitigating McKinnon's damage, keeping him to the outside, forcing him to delay pucks, denying his access to the inside. Well, what did he do once the series started? He recognized the fact that he's going to also have to be that much more of a playmaker. So he's going to draw attention, then kick pucks to the inside. And as the series wore on, it was just like, if he wasn't going, then you had to worry about Nichushkin, who puts up 7 goals. And then you got to worry about Lehkonen. And we all know that their back end can really contribute. But I thought one of the differences, and I kind of agree with him, I didn't think, Hellebuyck said, I didn't see that many pucks, right? That's basically what he's saying. And I think one of the biggest factors, and I pointed it out in my second breakdown of this series, was I thought Georgiev, in his quote unquote bounce back game in game 2, he showed a different demeanor. He was calm, he was collected, he was beating a lot of passes on his feet. And he was just, like I said, he just showed this body language, a different swagger about him that just said, I've got this, you guys go score it well.
John, I have to ask you about the special teams, because that was the kind of Achilles heel of this Jets club all season long. It's something that GM Kevin Cheveldayoff mentioned to us in his end of season media availability. He talked about, the special teams being, I think they were top 10 2 years ago, and now you go into the bottom 10 of the league. So from your perspective, from a coaching perspective, and you can talk about either, although I think the PK is probably the more concerning of the two. And we know how, look, in this playoffs, we've seen Edmonton's power play go crazy against, in theory, a good defensive team like the Kings. And similarly, the good defensive team like Winnipeg get torched by the Colorado Avalanche. So from a coaching perspective on that PK specifically, what was it that the Jets, from your perspective, weren't doing enough of to really change things? Because that was their Achilles heel, I thought, throughout the playoffs and the regular season.
Yeah, and you go to the regular season. I mean, the uptick obviously that Sean Monahan brought to the power play from the point that he joined the team on February 5th. I'd gone on Montreal radio. I talked about it, and same thing with the Daily Faceoff. I said Montreal's power play is going to go one way, and Winnipeg's power play is going to go the other way, because he is that connective tissue between the net presence and your QB on the back end. And then he's so great at either alleviating pressure, at being a decoy at times. He's good at deflections. He's good on face-off. So I thought that, if you have a Monahan all year, maybe the power play numbers are a little bit different. But in terms of their PK, Colorado, again, there is a bit of a structure, very similar to Edmonton. There is a structure, but there is a lot based on concepts and instincts. Like, you can only hold back players so much. I think coaches, and I've discussed this with private groups that I've hosted throughout the pandemic in Coaches Cafe. A lot of coaches kind of admitted one of our number one jobs as coaches: don't get in the way. Don't get in the way. Like, we could be very stubborn at times that, I've got this plan, I've drawn out these X's and O's, and the boys just got to execute it. But the reality is, those stars, they're at that level beyond their talent is because of their instincts. And I think that there's elements between a McKinnon and Makar where their instincts decide whether they're going to roll up too high, whether they look like a 1-3-1, whether Makar and McKinnon switch spots. And then the other guys have a certain understanding that if, McKinnon comes up top and Makar goes on his 1T side, then we're going to rotate. And that's the thing. They never seem to have the same look twice in a row. So when a team decides to deploy a diamond, when they decide to deploy what's called like a T intersection, where you have, F1 right on top, F2 in the middle, mitigating any east-west passes, and then the D, they have to flex out on those flank shots. Well, the thing is the fact that their instincts allow them to move around, they actually can underhandle pucks at time. They just find a way to exploit as many 2-on-1 possibilities, and it's very tough to mitigate that. But the reality was, at times there seemed to be a bit of panic, and you're either hesitating or you're overtly aggressive at times, and that created a disconnect, because if one guy goes, all four guys got to go. If one guy holds, everybody else has got to hold. And when you have that disconnect, that's what I saw. Then Colorado was able to really take advantage.
I think you make a lot of good points there, John, and especially with Sean Monahan, if he's a member of the Jets all year long, most likely that power play is ranked a lot higher. And I was kind of thinking the same thing. I'm not sure if this crossed your mind watching the Avalanche Jet series, but if the Avalanche have Casey Middlestat as their second line center, as opposed to Ryan Johansson, who obviously was struggling offensively, they're probably not a 107-point team. They're probably like a 115-point team. But I wanted to just get away from the Jets and look ahead to the second round, because obviously the Golden Knights defeated the Stars 2-0. We're not really used to those scores here in Winnipeg, John. We're more used to like 7-6, 6-3 type of scores in the playoffs. But looking ahead to the second round, because the Avalanche have obviously had at least, what do they have, 4 days off now before the second round. But whether it's Dallas or Vegas, how do you think Colorado matches up against those two teams? Because I think you'd agree, Colorado's not just happy to get to the second round. This is a team that wants to win another cup.
Oh, they're 100% in it to win it. I mean, I think that's the what would that be? The Captain Morgan, Captain Obvious kind of commentary from any of us is the thing is they do have a balance of and the ability to have a physical aspect. One thing that I thought they embraced as the series wore on was that they were willing to forecheck and create off the forecheck. And that's the maturation process of any team. Go back to Tampa in 2019, they get swept by Columbus. Why? Because it was possession, and it bit them in the ass. And next thing you know, Columbus was going the other way. And fast forward a year later, and all of a sudden the quality and the quantity of dump-ins or place and chase, as I like to put it, by Tampa was very evident. And in fact, you look at some of the series clinching goals, like Cirelli, for example, against the Islanders, was off of a place and chase. And Colorado has started to embrace that. They've got speed, they got poise, but it doesn't matter unless you connect the two. And at times, if you've got space, you make the play in front of you. You don't have the space, you have to make the other team turn around. And people in this day and age, and I consult in analytics, it's all about possession. No, it's about the quality of your possession. And the quality of your possession might be 2 seconds of really smart work, or it might be 20 seconds of really smart work. But at the end of the day, the end goal is to get to the inside and score. And the thing is seeing Colorado go up against any of these two next opponents, I think then if it's Vegas is going to try to overtly be physical early and often in the series. I think if it's Dallas, I think we see an absolute track meet. It's going to look like drag racing back and forth. And I think either series brings different, very unique challenges to either side. But both will make for an unbelievable series to watch.
John Gogens is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. John does work with TSN 690 in Montreal. He's also on Daily Faceoffs, the Coaches Room. John, not specific to the Winnipeg Jets necessarily, but for the last couple of years, we've seen the Jets really employ what I would describe as a passive penalty killing setup. Not aggressive, really just trying to maintain structure more than anything. From your insights and your time in the game, what's the benefit of a passive penalty kill system? Because it seems like it hurts more often than it helps, just on if you want to consider it sort of at a macro level.
Well, I think this can be, what I'll say next can be applied to all facets of the game. I think that there are a lot of game plans out there that are too limiting. They're too limiting. Mm-hmm. You have 82 games. If you know that you've got a team that's, it's going to make the playoffs, the goal is to make the playoffs, and you maybe you don't exactly, I know it sounds crazy, if you don't exactly care about the President's Trophy, if you don't really care, because the thing is, if you focus on who's your first opponent, then you get caught with your pants down a little bit and you're not prepared between the years. I think too many game plans, whether it be a 5-on-5 or on special teams, are too obvious. They play 82 games the exact same way, and they become stubborn in how they're employed. I think any team needs to understand that on the penalty killing, you have moments and days where you can be more aggressive up the ice, depending on certain triggers. You have moments where you can be a little bit more aggressive on the entry. You could be a little bit more aggressive in zone. You have other moments where you've got to kind of hold the fort type of mentality, and also score. The clock can also play in these factors. But if you are always the same, if you are always only aggressive or only passive, and to your point, Drew, like if it's constantly passive and the numbers don't back it up, this is where, again, you could call it analytics, you could call it information. That's what it is. It's about winning with more information, not going, oh, that's too much to understand. We're putting too much on the players. The players want to win. The players want to be successful. And I think at times we've got to, armor them, and give them the weapons of information without bogging them down mentally on being like, hey, we're playing this team tonight on this particular trigger. We could be more aggressive. But if Drew's jumping, Dave's got to seal this, Ezra's got to seal this, that's done in 8 seconds. And you need 1 or 2 examples in video. That meeting takes 3 minutes max. And there's different ways also to engage the players with video nowadays, with obviously the ability to put things on clouds, put game plans out ahead of time. So as they show up to the arena, nothing is brand new. Everything is reviewed. And now you get their perspective. To lack the perspective of the players who are actually performing will be a massive, massive hole in special teams, because at the end of the day, us coaches can watch one clip 1,000 times, rewind, pause, zoom in, but the play happened in less than a second. So the window and the view of players is unique to them, and they need to have, especially at the National Hockey League, they need to be in a position to collaborate with their coaches, because then they're going to be empowered and then they're going to execute with ownership.
John, one of the things I observed, and I noticed that it happened a couple of times in this series between the Jets and the Avs, was, and it's funny because after the exit meetings, they talked about playoff intensity. And you can see a team that's won the Stanley Cup just recently in the Colorado Avalanche. Jared Bednar, I'm thinking of specifically in the last game, Game 5, the Avs are up 5-3 in the third period. Jared Bednar's got his team. I think it was a TV timeout or an actual timeout. The whole team is around him. The whole team is focused, and the Jets are back at the bench, and maybe one or two guys are talking to the coaching staff. That happened throughout this course of the series. And I'm just curious from your perspective, how important are those sort of opportunities for a coach to kind of rein things in? Because to me, from my perspective, I'm sitting in the press box and I'm watching a Jets team right now that's down by 2 goals. And I understand they might be a little shell-shocked. They might be a little tired. But I just saw, to me, it looked like the Avs looked like the team that were trying to game plan to score 2 goals, not to protect the 2-goal lead. And the Jets looked like a team that was more comfortable and not trying to figure out a game plan during that time you're in the bench. And I saw it. There was an instance like that in Colorado where, one of the assistant coaches was Brad Lauer was trying to kind of get guys to him, and guys were, they had 2 or 3 guys, not the full team. I just thought Bednar had that buy-in. Is that factor in at all? Or is that just me making an observation that really doesn't mean much other than what I saw?
No, I think it is a good observation. When I'm calling games from the Bell Center or at Place Bell, one of the things as a color analyst is I love to watch the bench. I love to watch how certain staffs are more vocal. Some coaches are up and down the bench. And what do they do during TV timeouts? Because in a game where technically you only have 1 timeout, you really have 10 timeouts. You have 9 TV timeouts. Mm-hmm. Then you have your 1 30-second timeout. 30 seconds. And the thing is why not take advantage of those moments, right? Especially if you're down by 2, especially if you're in a playoff game. It could be board talk. It could be just regrouping them with certain cues. That engagement, I've always been considered a coach that is constantly engaging, but at some points you got to take a step back. But in a moment like that, that's a time to no, we got to kind of galvanize the group here. We got to get them on the same page. And you can't just wait till you're going to pull the goalie 3-4 minutes from now. Why not start going, hey, you know what? We're down by 2. These are all our offensive zone faceoffs from here on in. Here it is. Boom, on the board. Or one of the suggestions I made to some coaches, and I've watched one particular coach, and I think it was Jim Montgomery that did it, is why don't more teams, hear me out now, why don't more teams with all the technology that's available record face-off plays, late game situations, put them on iPads, and instead of us with our, my 8-year-old handwriting on a board while there's 20,000 people screaming and music playing, instead of me doing that, why don't I just pull out the iPad and go, this is the scenario. We're down by 2. Like in football, we're down by 2. Here's what we're doing from now on in the offensive zone. That takes 7 seconds. You replay it 3 times. You put your eyes on your players instead of the board, and now you get full engagement instead of chicken scratch all over the board. So, Dave, I agree with you. I love that engagement. I think that's why, guys like Bednar, guys like Coop, who are stoic but very, very in tune with what their team needs and when they need it, they do a phenomenal job. And I've been a big fan of Bednar, especially the fact that Colorado stuck by him through tough times and let him grow at the National Hockey League level and with this group.
Absolutely. I think, we all agree, and most people watching and listening agree that Jared Bednar is a really good head coach. And last question for you, John, and this is awesome. We believe this is the first time we've ever had you on, and hopefully you'll come back on. And we recommend everybody follow John on X/Twitter, Gourmet _hockey. Love that name, John. And obviously we're a big fan of Daily Faceoff. We've got to know Frank over the years, and we have Colby Cohen on every so often. So just wanted to get that in there. We really appreciate you making some time on Saturday morning. Last question, because I might have to put my kids to bed around when the Bruins-Leafs game starts tonight. But I'm really excited for that Game 7. And I wanted to ask you specifically about the job that you think Jim Montgomery and Sheldon Keefe have done in this series, because we know that the Bruins were in the driver's seat up 3-1, but I don't know about you, John, but I'm watching that game 6, and it's like the Boston Bruins players had never played together before. It was incredible. And yes, the Leafs did an excellent job of smothering them. But I guess, what did you see in that game 6, and what do you expect in game 7? Because the Bruins certainly looked like a very pedestrian team in game 6.
Well, I thought game 6, you look at that 15-1 in shots right out the gate, and I'm watching this with some friends of mine, and I'm like, it's only 4 slot shots. And because to me, that's what it always comes back to, right? Or it should for everybody. How does a team score? How does a team not score? And, how can we mitigate? How can we limit? And at the end of the day, about 80%, 82% of all goals are scored from the slot. So out of 15, 16 shots, only 4 were from the slot, and it was 16-1. So it didn't look good. Boston didn't have a mojo about them. Their zone entries haven't been as good. I feel that they're holding on to pucks. With a bit of background information that I have, I feel that there's guys that they want the big moment. They are forcing the big moment. They are forcing the heroic big goal. And one thing I learned a long time ago, and trying to reiterate this to players, is it is truly about doing the little things really consistently well, and then boom, next thing you know, you're on SportsCenter, right? Because all of a sudden an opening happened, someone fell down, a hell of a saucer pass, a bad line change, and all of a sudden you're the man on that breakaway and you're winning that game. But when you force things, and I feel like we watch them, they're not moving the puck the way they normally do. When you look at some of the stats, it's staggering that Toronto's still in this series. They've got 11 goals in 6 games. It's 16-11 in goals. Boston's power play is at 40%. Their penalty killing's at 95%. In fact, Toronto's power play has been so bad since the trade deadline. It was sitting 27th going into the playoffs at 13.3%. They became too obvious. They became a little bit stale, and teams have been doing a really good job. Now, I'll go to Key first. I think their decision to go to Joseph Woll was phenomenal timing. If Joseph Woll's not in, we're not even talking about the fact that this is going game 7. I got to call Joseph Woll's conditioning stint when they came to Laval. It's one of the first times I could say at any position that a player was like, the game looked like it was slow to him. He was on top of his crease. He wasn't moody. He wasn't pouting. He was just like, this game's too easy. This speed is too easy. It was like he was playing down back in junior or college hockey. So I think that people have underestimated what William Nylander can do at 5-on-5 when he can be considered the man, the go-to guy, and he proved it. On the Boston side, I still feel that there's certain elements that are very similar to last year where they know what to do. They're either squeezing the stick, they're either trying to force things that aren't there, and at times their game management hasn't been good enough. Now, after that 16-1 in shots, it went the next stretch was something like 21 or 22-8 in Boston's favor. But again, everything is a lot of perimeter. They're not getting to the inside. You could say they're not getting a call. Let's be honest, that cross-check right before that first goal by Toronto, that is egregious. I'm surprised Monty's not bleeding from the mouth, biting his tongue as much as he's been trying to do. But you look at it and you're like, they're just not getting enough play to the inside. There's been criticism on playing with the lineup, but we could all speculate. We don't know the day-to-day bumps and bruises. I think that Boston could have easily won this in 5. They haven't. Toronto has made this a series. And at the end of the day, we as pundits, we as fans could actually just thank them for putting us in this position. Could you imagine a Saturday night on May 4th with 0 playoff games to watch right now?
That would be bad news. So we'll enjoy game 7 tonight. John Gogens is with TSN 690 in Montreal. He's also with the Daily Faceoff, the coach's room. John, thanks so much for joining us this morning. This was terrific insight. Hopefully we'll do it again real soon. Have a great rest of your Saturday.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
There
Thanks
you
so
go.
much, John.
John Gogens joining us this morning. Great interview with John. We'll come back, one last commercial break, and then we'll wrap up the show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. It's a Saturday edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
It's all over, folks, and the run has come to an end.
You'll be so far away.
A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in over 30 years.
And the Cup will stay south of the border.
Maybe it's time we try something different. This playoff season, let's cheer with the fans we've always cheered against. Team up for the Cup at Boston Pizza.
Hey, Winnipeg, Wendell Clark here. I'm coming out there May 28th for the Rady JCC dinner. Myself, Dougie Gilmore, Grant Fuhr. Some good storytelling about Winnipeg beating us up when we used to come there. See you there.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Shortly before 11 o'clock, this is a hell of an entertaining show. Great insight from Ken Wiebe. Great insight from John Gogens. Great insight from Dave and Ezzy. Me, less so, but that's okay. You guys really brought your A game today as well.
But you've got the best outfit, so that's makes up for it.
That's true. Exactly. I'm blinding people to the nonsense I'm spewing by looking as dapper as I am, a mere almost 7 hours away from post time in Louisville, Kentucky for the Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby. I shall be drinking the bourbon coming up in a few hours time. I encourage everybody to, of course, drink that if they so choose as well. Whatever they're drinking tonight, please drink it responsibly. Fun Saturday. Lots of Jets talk still to come. So, they're just getting started with this offseason. Like every offseason, maybe not as many headline decisions need to be made on this team, but there's still some key aspects to this team, the retooling, the coaching, the free agents that are pending. It'll be interesting to see what it all unfolds over the next couple of months. And of course, we'll have the latest for you, Ezzy, on illegalcurve.com and here every Saturday morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Right. And even though, there's not a big Pierre-Luc Dubois trade coming like there was at last year's draft in Nashville, and there's not that kind of uncertainty like there was last year with Blake Wheeler, Mark Scheifele, Connor Hellebuyck. I mean, this is still a very important offseason. We joke every year, that it's the most important offseason. We've been saying that for, I think, 8 years now, 9 years.
Every offseason is until you win the cup.
Right. But exactly. So it's still key, right? And, we talked to Kenny in his 3.5 hour interview about, Dylan DeMello, Brendan Dillon, Sean Monahan, Tyler Toffoli. I mean, we can rule out Toffoli, guys. I think he's just going to make too much money, and he just doesn't fit in, I think, to the short-term and medium-term plans for the Jets.
Yeah.
But, I think there's a good chance Sean Monahan signs. And, can the Jets sign both Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello? That remains to be seen. Cole Perfetti, Dave, is going to be an RFA as well. So I think we all agree it's going to be a bridge deal. I don't think the Jets are going to sign him to an 8-year deal yet. I don't think Perfetti will sign an 8-year deal. So I'm expecting a bridge deal for Perfetti. But again, we'll get into these types of things, as we get further into May and into June. We'll start talking about the draft. Obviously, the Jets don't have a first-round pick in Vegas, but they've got a high second-round pick. So we'll go a little bit maybe deeper into the second round with some of our prospects experts that we like to have on, Chris Peters, Scott Wheeler, Craig Button, those types of folks, right? So there's a lot to talk about. And, even though it was a disappointing year for the Jets, like Dave said, I mean, the Jets were the best defensive team or the second best defensive team, whatever you want to say. And, they still, I think it was still nice to see the whiteout again 3 times at Canada Life Center. And I know a lot of Jets fans are upset that the Jets, didn't get into the second round or further. I still think there's a lot of reasons for optimism, whether that's Brad Lambert, whether that's Heinola, Rutger McGroarty, Colby Barlow. There's a lot of reasons to be excited if you're a Jets fan.
I would agree with what.
Well, and it's amazing.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to quickly. It's just going to say 2 things. One, we went through a whole show and we didn't even get a chance to talk about Murat's line in his article. I fully expect Ehlers to be shopped and likely moved between now and the draft. So that will definitely be a subject of conversation. I'm not obviously not now, but that's a pretty big statement from Murat, and we'll of course discuss that here on next week's little sneak peek of peak at what's going to happen.
It's 3
what's
weeks
going to happen next week. And I do want to say that 290 of you voted in the poll as to whether you think Rick Bowness will return as head coach. 63% of you said no. 36% of you said yes. And then apparently 1% of you didn't give an answer, but it doesn't factor in. So there you go. There's the answer to the polling question. Folks overwhelmingly believe Rick Bowness will not be back next year. If he is or isn't, we will have it on illegalcurve.com, as we will now that, the Jets insanity is done. And again, like I said, all the exit interviews are on the website, so you can listen to them there. On our YouTube channel, you can listen to them there. And I'm going to start to post all the Moose ones because we did close to 20 interviews with Moose players. So for folks who want their Moose, their daily dose of Moose, we'll have some of that coming for you in the next few weeks or the next week.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minute Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
I don't know why Bubba Guttman.
I had my finger on that for at least 2 minutes.
Every Saturday, I say to myself, we have to remove Ezzy's access from being able to touch anything. And every Saturday, I forget to do it. So this is my reminder that next week, Ezzy will no longer have access to controlling the control panel.
Well, anyway, so we did interviews with I like 99% of the team, as well as Mark Morrison, the head coach. We've got Mark Morrison's up. He had some good insight into the various Jets draft picks. So if you haven't gotten a chance to listen to that one, be sure to check that out. And again, like I said, we've already posted our chats with Chaz Lucius, Colby Barlow, and Danny Zhilkin. But we spoke to Chibrikov and Lambert and Capobianco and Toninato and all the guys who play for Jeff Malott. That was an emotional one because we don't know if he's going to be back. He's a UFA next year. Christian Reichel, he's a UFA next year. Kyle Capobianco, he's a UFA next year. Some of these guys are Group 6 UFAs, but the point is there's a lot of guys there's a lot of uncertainty. Could be some turnover from guys who have been staples of this Manitoba Moose team. I jokingly said with Christian Reichel because we've been watching him since he was Red Deer, coming to Jets training camps from, as an invite. And he's been in Winnipeg now for at least 6 years. So a lot of these guys we've paid a close attention to. And like I said, that'll be available on our YouTube channel and illegalcurve.com. So, and of course, we'll be doing interviews in August when this show takes a little bit of a hiatus. We'll still have our catch-ups with those players. But that's
Dave, it's May. We're talking about August already.
Exactly. It's May. Let's relax on the August already there.
Ezzy, for the record, you're the one who gave me the opportunity. No. So I decided to open it right up.
Okay, that's enough out of both of you. Big thanks to all of you.
Drew, we gave Ken like an extra half an hour. That was our talk time. So we got to get it
talking about August. At least he was talking about things that are relevant, not August.
Okay, fine. My last thing, because we have to mention it. And I'm sorry, comment if he wouldn't have mentioned, I may have let it slip. But Thomas Milic, the Moose Jets 2023 fifth rounder, he got his 3-year ELC signed yesterday. Really good, 19-9-2 with the Moose. He was a big part of their turnaround. So well deserving of him. And if you want to hear Coach Mark Morrison's comments on Milic, we've got those in the post on illegalcurve.com. I'm officially Finito.
Thank you to everyone for joining us this Saturday morning with the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. A big thank you to all the sponsors of Illegal Curve who make the post-game show, which of course will be off until the 24-25 season, the Saturday show, and the website a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Grid Park, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, and Seagram support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve.
We've got
Hockey.
the comment up there, Drew. You forgot about your hat guy.
And my hat guy, yes. The hat guy also deserves all the praise in the world as well. Enjoy your Saturday.
Can I just say one thing? One thing. It's been bugging me. I've been trying to bring this up and trying to find the right time, though. Is anybody else bothered by the fact that it's going to be Stars? The first round's not going to be over, and the second round starting on the same day?
No, that doesn't bother me at all. Get the damn playoffs over with before the middle of July would be my comment.
Well, isn't that kind of weird that we're going to be watching? Like,
it is weird. They do that in the NBA, right, Drew? But I don't love
been
it.
doing that for years.
Okay, so technically,
I don't love it. I'm with
technically the second round's actually going to start before the first round's over.
Yes, technically that'll be
like the Rangers. I'm looking at the start times right now.
4 o'clock tomorrow, right?
Yeah, 3 o'clock Central, 4 o'clock Eastern, and then the Golden Knights Stars is at 6:30. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I just why not just wait a day and then just start this? I don't know. It's kind of weird that the second round.
The season's long enough. The playoffs go long enough already. Let's wrap it up before Dave's starting his August interview
like this show.
With the Moose players. Like this show, exactly. Smash the like button. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already done so. Leave us feedback. Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to doff my cap to everybody. Enjoy the Derby later on this afternoon. It's one of my favorite days of the year. We'll see you next Saturday morning. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your weekend.